I like giving this talk, especially when there's an opportunity like tomorrow, which is a Friday the 13th. It still amazes me that people react to something like that in a way that, oh, you know, you better not go out of the house, or I hope my baby isn't born on the 13th, or whatever. And some of you know that I teach the history of science and how we got to where we are. And you may remember, those of you in my class, that a couple hundred years ago we were supposed to have entered the age of enlightenment and the age of reason. So again, it still baffles me that people have ideas that really perhaps are not rational, but we'll talk about that. So, first of all, how would we define a superstition? Well, it's a belief or a practice resulting from ignorance. Well, ignorance doesn't mean you're stupid, it means you don't have information. You don't know maybe the facts behind something. It's very often based on the fear of the unknown. Trust in magic or chances, believing that something is controlling things, and that if you go through certain rituals, you can kind of defeat the bad stuff that's out there waiting to happen. Or a false conception of causation. What that means is, you see sports figures do this sometimes. They had an absolutely wonderful game, and they just happened to be wearing a certain pair of socks that day. And somehow they attribute their success that day to those socks. So they never wash those socks again. Okay. And they make sure that they put those socks on because they're their lucky socks. Again, I hope you realize that what socks you have on do not control how well you hit a baseball that day. But the linkage of causation. It's a notion maintained despite evidence to the contrary. Superstitions are not based on true knowledge or scientific data. They're very often based on what we call anecdotes. Again, the idea that those socks. I have a former acquaintance who shall remain nameless. She's no longer at the college, but she was on an airplane flight once that really was kind of scary. They experienced some turbulence, and she thought she was going to die and everything. Well, it ended up being fine. She landed safely, still alive, still doing well. But on that particular day, she had on a light lavender blouse. And from that day forward, she would never go on a plane unless she wore the color lavender. Now, the fact that she had on a lavender blouse is not what kept that plane from crashing. Okay. But it makes her feel better to believe that. Is any harm done by that? Not really. But sometimes we do need to be careful about some of these superstitions. So I'm just going to go through some. By the way, the college won't let me have a ladder in here. I think that's funny. Because I really want to walk through a ladder. No. You really think that... Okay, that's good. No. Again, maybe, and what I'm trying to do here is show you, again, it's fun. I hope that it's fun for you to talk about these things. But just show you where the origins of some of these superstitions are. And if, after hearing this, you think that bad things are really going to happen to you if you walk under a ladder, that's fine. If you never want to walk under a ladder, you probably won't have things dropped on you. Okay. But the origin comes from, most of it comes from mythology and religions. And during the Dark Ages, medieval ages, and whatever, and even more anciently, but with Christianity, the way a ladder forms a triangle is considered a sacred symbol. The Trinity. In Catholicism, the Trinity. And so the feeling is if you walk through that, you are disrespecting the Trinity. You are breaking up the triangle that represents God. Another aspect of this is that people were often hanged from ladders, or there was a ladder leading up to the gallows. So it was bad luck to walk under a ladder that was going up to the gallows because, again, it was believed that if the hangman saw you, aha, you're next. Whatever, I don't know. But just a bad idea. Okay. It's probably a bad idea, again, because somebody might be up on the ladder and drop a screwdriver or something. But again, those are the origins of that. Four-leaf clovers. This is considered good luck in some cultures. And the 4 leaves of the clover are supposed to represent fame, wealth, love, and health. So if you ever find a 4-leaf clover, that's supposed to be an omen of good luck, that you will find these 4 good things happening in your life. Again, that 4-leaf clover is actually a fake. I don't know if you can see it. Right in the middle. This leaf really doesn't belong there. It's stuck in the other one. I don't know what happens to people who use phony 4-leaf clovers. Whoops. This time, I just skip there. There we go. Knocking on wood. You hear people do this, and it's usually when you have said something, boy, I hope it doesn't rain this weekend. When you say something wishful, or you're even kind of bragging, like, you know, I have, I don't know, you could say, again, like a football player may say, you know, every game I've been in, I've thrown a touchdown. Why? Because when you say things like that, that are a little bit bragging, you're kind of tempting the gods. Like you're out there to, aha, you're just a little bit too cocky, you're a little bit too sure of yourself, so I'm going to get you. Now the origin of this is that the Druids, an ancient religion in Northern Europe, they believed that spirits, good and evil spirits, lived in the trees. I can't find my, but in the Roman religion, I believe one of the gods was thought to live in a tree. So what you're doing is saying, I hope it doesn't rain this weekend for my big party. The gods be willing. In other words, hello in there, I know you are, and I know you can control the weather this week, so, you know, okay. That's really where it comes from. Zeus, I got it right there. Zeus lived in a tree. Spilling salt. Is it? Again, where does this come from? Well, if you look very closely, again, there are many sources for some of these. In the Leonardo da Vinci's painting Last Supper, Judas is knocking over the container of salt. And we know what happened to him. So it's considered bad luck. But probably the main origin of that was, and again in my classes we talked about this, that salt was extremely valuable in ancient times. It was what the Roman soldiers were paid in. That's where our word salary comes from. It comes from the fact that they were given salt. Why? Because salt was used to preserve food, primarily meat. So if you had salt, your family would live, could eat. Okay, so, and that's also why spilling salt is considered bad luck, because this is my family's treasured salt container, and this is all we're ever going to have, and if I spill some, you know, again, it's considered bad luck. Now again, I like to mess around with things. This isn't totally salt. This is light salt. So salt to a chemist, or to most people, is sodium chloride. But to a chemist, a salt means, what are there, probably thousands of things that are salts. They just mean a certain category of compounds. So is it only sodium chloride? What happens if I take sodium chloride and mix it with potassium iodide, another salt? Do I only get half as much bad luck? Okay? Again, how can a chemical compound affect your life other than to taste good on your french fries or whatever? There's also a belief if you spill salt, what are you supposed to do? Throw it over which shoulder?
Right shoulder.
Your left shoulder. Why? Because there's evil spirits all around us. And just waiting to pounce. Okay. So, bad luck because I spilled salt. I throw some salt in the evil spirit's eyes. That's why you throw it over your shoulder.
Please don't slip.
What?
Don't fall.
I'll clean it up. No, I haven't even begun. Okay. You know what this is, anybody?
Crystal.
It's a crystal of
Quartz.
salt.
Salt.
Sodium chloride. This is a very large crystal of salt compared to the tiny little crystals here. This is the natural way that salt grows. So again, I just wanted you to see that, is this, does this give me more bad luck if I drop that than if I drop, is it quantified how much bad luck I'm going to have? Again, some of this, you just think about it and kind of ask, inquiring minds want to know, you kind of see, it really doesn't make sense. You can see where it comes from, and that's, again, what I think is useful. Now, storks. In some cultures, storks are considered good luck. And storks are the symbol of what? Babies. You're going to have a baby. So we use stork symbols in baby showers and things. Okay. Well, it used to be, in ancient Rome, storks were considered a sacred bird. Especially to the goddess Venus, who's the goddess of love. So if a stork built a nest on your roof, you were in for some really good luck. And back then it meant a baby. The philosopher Aristotle in Greece, he was responsible for making it a crime to kill a stork because you were depriving some family of their little blessing that was supposed to be on the way and whatever. Counting crows. Most of you know that as a band, right? But it actually has a superstition behind it. I never knew this. I have had so much fun research. I had to make myself stop because the list was just getting too long in terms of this stuff. But crows were considered omens. And how many crows you would see together. By the way, a group of crows is called a murder. I don't know where that comes from, but like there's a gaggle of geese and a pod of whales and whatever, and it's a murder of crows. Anyway. And the pattern is if you see a single crow, that's bad luck. If you see two crows, it's good luck. If you see 3 crows, that's a sign of health, an omen that good health. If you see 4 crows, it's a sign that you're going to become wealthy. If you see 5 crows, it's predicting impending sickness, and 6 crows means somebody's going to die.
Wow.
Again, I don't know where that comes from, but again, why would people think that? Maybe because somebody noticed there were 6 crows out the window when, my uncle died. I don't know. People put things together that they think explains it. Yeah.
I think the crows come from medieval times when there was a lot of death and the crows would be around the dead people, so that they were associated with bad luck.
That's good, thank you. Did everybody hear that? The association of crows with, I think more buzzards and things like that. But yeah, big black birds are scary. And they hang around when people are dying. Now think of the Middle Ages again, where so much death was happening, the plagues and everything. Crows were probably having
Field day.
field day, right. So seeing the crows were, to some people, an indication that something bad was about to happen. But notice some of them were good. Some of them represented health. A different number represented sickness. Again, I really couldn't find the origins of those specific numbers, but it's interesting. Now, black cats. There's a young woman here who talked to me in class the other day about the black cats. Again, that her mother is very afraid of black cats, and if she sees a black cat walking across the street, she will back up and go another way or whatever. That's not very nice to cats. You know, a cat can't help what color it is. And does a cat have to be totally black? I have 2 black cats, but each of them one has just the tiniest little speck of white. Does he count as a black cat? I mean, does it have to be more than 50? You know. They're
It's
just,
always paint.
yeah, but black magic marker, I was going to take care of that, yeah. But there really is a horrible prejudice against black cats. Black cats are black dogs, too, are the hardest for humane societies and animal rescue places to adopt out. People don't want a black cat or a black dog. Around Halloween, people who have black cats really need to keep them inside. People will hurt them. People will kill a cat or hurt the cat simply because its fur is black. Now, again, where's the logic behind that? Well, cats, especially black cats, were always associated with witches during medieval times. In fact, even in Harry Potter, who does McGonagall, what does she do when she turns into a cat? They were also what were called, I'm forgetting the word, familiars, thank you. That familiars were animals that, like witches, could put themselves into or turn into various, and so that's what black cats were often associated with. They're said to have 9 lives because apparently a witch could only do this 9 times. Yes?
My familiar just so happens to be a black.
Your familiar is a black cat.
She just happens to be black.
Do you turn into a black cat?
No.
Okay.
That's utterly impossible.
Okay, well then-
Close.
So it's not really a familiar in the way that we're talking about. You know,
I
kind
know
of
what we're talking about, but she and I have a close relationship.
a real cat. Okay. I have 2 black cats that are my babies. So, but again, this comes from the belief in witchcraft and the myths and ideas that surfaced. Now, again, one thing that was interesting in researching this is how different superstitions are in different cultures. In England, cats are good luck. So how can taking a ship across the Atlantic Ocean change the fact that black cats are good luck, bad cats are bad luck? There was an Egyptian goddess who was a black female cat, and she was not an evil goddess. Cats were almost sacred. They were sacred in the Egyptian culture. And a black cat was a symbol of royalty and power and things like that. So again, it's different how different beliefs can be so contrary to each other in different things and different ideas. But please don't pick on bad black cats. Okay? Again, they can't help it. And again, whatever. Gotta get the point.
Professor Madea, did you want to hear the explanation for murder of crows?
I don't know it.
Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
I looked it up.
Oh, thank you. A murder of crows. Why is it called a murder of crows?
It can be traced back to at least the 15th century when it was recorded as a murder, T-H-E-R, of crows. Murder is a variant of Middle English, murder, though the T-H sound had begun to be replaced by a D around the 1300s. Several theories, but all of them have to do with the supposed behavior of crows. Crows are scavengers and therefore often seen feeding on rotting bodies of various sorts. Survivors of wars have described how the battlefields were covered in black crows, and they came down to eat the dead. Another theory harkens back to old folklore, which told of groups of crows holding court over members of their flock who had committed offenses. If they decided against the defendant crow, then the rest of the flock would swoop down on it and kill it. So it all has to do with them feeding on death and being aggressive.
Okay, wow. Always interesting stuff, and thank goodness for the internet, the stuff you can find out. Now, it's, you know, anybody can post anything there, but
Oh, if it's on the internet, it's true.
Oh, absolutely.
Google said.
We're getting close to the time of year where in this country we celebrate Thanksgiving. And one of the traditions in Thanksgiving is after the turkey is consumed, this thing called the wishbone, which is from the neck part of it. Right here. I'm looking at you because yeah. And at some point, somebody gets to try to break the wishbone, and it'll snap, but it usually does not snap in half because it has that real strong part in the middle. So the person who gets the larger piece of it is considered that they're going to have good luck. That comes from, as it says, they were used to predict the future back in the Etruscan, which was the cultures in what we now call Italy. Again, why or whatever is not always explained, but that's where the tradition comes from, even into our culture. Horseshoes. Horseshoes symbolize good luck, but only if they're pointing up. Because if you hang them backwards, all the luck falls out. Horseshoes are considered good luck because, one thing, traditional horseshoes have 7 holes in them. They don't all have, but traditionally horseshoes had 7 holes, and 7 is a very lucky, number in many societies. Also, horseshoes are made of iron, and iron is considered and has been considered in ancient cultures to be capable of warding off evil spirits and things. So again, if you hung a horseshoe in your house, you were getting the advantage both of the number 7, which is a lucky number, and also the iron horseshoe that would ward off evil spirits. Opening an umbrella inside. Go. Anybody else want to?
You're prepared if the roof leaks.
Yes. Now, it's considered to be bad luck to open an umbrella inside. Probably the main reason for that is, you could poke someone in the eye while you're doing it. Or it obstructs your vision at times. But it's a bad idea, but it is not a source of bad luck. And the origin of this was, in the Egyptian culture, one of their main deities was Ra, the god of the sun. And when temples were built to him, they didn't have roofs on them because they wanted the god to be able to shine his blessings into the temple. So if you went in there to pay your respects to him or whatever, you wanted him to be able to reach you. So the idea of covering your head inside that temple, you're insulting the god. You're saying, I don't want your blessings on me. Okay? And again, when you realize where these things come from, this kind of maybe makes you think about, what does that have to do with my life? And do I still believe that? I mean, how many of you worship the god Ra and are afraid of insulting him? Probably not too many. Okay. Broken mirror. Now, a lot of people really believe this. Mirrors were very rare hundreds of years ago. People could see their reflection in a body of water, like Narcissus in Greek mythology, maybe in a piece of glass, if the light was shining right. But the idea of a mirror, the first mirrors were just shiny pieces of metal. Modern mirrors are glass with a silver surface painted on them. So, I brought this in. Okay. Would you consider that a mirror? Well, you can kind of see yourself in it. But it isn't. It's a piece of glass with a piece of aluminum foil. So, again, people believe that spirits lived in the mirrors, or your soul, when you looked at yourself in a mirror, that was your soul. So at what point does this piece of glass, which becomes a mirror, at what point does my soul go in there? At what point do the evil spirits go in there? Okay, now I have a better mirror. Okay. And again, people believe it's bad luck if you break a mirror. It's considered 7 years bad luck because, again, whether this is true, it was claimed it would take 7 years to make a new mirror. Somebody's pretty slow at it. I'm going to do this on the floor because this table isn't.
I know, right?
Right?
Sure, bad luck.
No, come on, let's do
Come
it.
on. Anybody?
No, do it. Oh, yeah.
Come on down. Come on down. Come on up. Oh, I gotta put the goggles on though.
Oh, come on.
No. Okay. Take this water. Stand back.
Well, you have to.
Let's go.
Woo!
Yay. Okay.
Ta-da.
Thank you. Report back next week and let me know who won the
I'll
lottery.
be here tomorrow.
Oh, no, you can do it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, again, why would that piece of glass have any effect on your faith? Again, remember the definition of superstition was a misunderstanding of cause and effect. How can something that happened there affect whether I'm going to get sick tomorrow, or I'm going to have a happy relationship in the future, or I'm going to win the lottery? The world doesn't work that way. Now, it is true that if you believe something is bad luck, it can affect how you think about things and maybe the decisions you make. Which is one of the disadvantages of superstitions, is if it keeps you from doing things you might want to do. If it makes you back your car up and go a different pathway and waste gasoline if nothing else. If it paralyzes you to the point where, I'm afraid of that, or I don't want to go to someone's house because they have a black cat. You're letting things that have no evidence for them for being true, you're letting that affect the quality of your life. And that's why I think it's important to understand the types of things we're talking about. Crossing your fingers. That just used to be a symbol of friendship and things, a secret symbol that people would give if they were trying to let each other know and whatever. I really don't know why putting it behind your back saves you from being guilty of telling a lie. But that is the thing, right? If you say, yes, I absolutely will be there on Saturday and I'm going to bring fried chicken, and if you've got your fingers crossed behind your back, it means you're lying. And it's like, it's okay to lie if you've got your fingers crossed. I don't know the total origin of that, except, again, it used to be a kind of a secret symbol. So that's something I'd like to know more about. Clothing. Lots of superstitions relating to clothing. Shoes have a lot of symbolism in them. It's considered bad luck to ever put shoes upside down. Again, I don't know why. A lot of superstitions are just around the fact that, again, that the world is filled with these invisible evil spirits who are constantly trying to sneak into our heads and into our bodies and control things. And again, the signals that we give them is considered bad luck to put shoes on the bed. Well, that just makes sense. I mean, it's not bad luck, it's just they're dirty. It's poor housekeeping, yes. Likewise with hats. It's supposed to be bad luck to ever put a hat on the bed. And the reason for that is kind of gross. It's like, think of, again, first of all, people don't wear hats much anymore. But think of people like who worked out in the country, working on their crops, digging in the dirt, feeding their animals, their hats were getting pretty gross. And people also didn't bathe a lot, so you're likely to have head lice. You don't want to put that on your bed. That's the one place where you kind of hope, that when you crawl into bed at night that it's reasonably clean. So that is where that comes from. Did I pass sneezing?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. There it is. Now this is something too, it is like an immediate reflex. Somebody sneezes, bless you, God bless you, whatever, through the whole room. And it's almost like a contest of who can say it the first and who can say it last. Now again, that's very nice to bless somebody. But let's look at the origins of it. In the 16th century and before, again when we're talking about medieval Europe and whatever, people believed that when you sneezed, you were actually expelling the evil spirits. So you would actually congratulate somebody for sneezing. Good for you. But then it got to the idea that, first of all, how many of you think that when you sneeze, your heart stops? Not true. Not even, no. But that's, again, a belief that people hold with no evidence that when you sneeze, your heart momentarily stops. So the idea of blessing somebody, you kind of hope your heart starts again, Also, there's a belief, also kind of the opposite of the first one I said. When you start to sneeze, you can't control, you have to close your eyes. You just cannot, your sneezing takes over your whole body. It's an autonomic response. And it is believed that during that period of time when you are sneezing, that the evil spirits can get in. So again, the blessing you is to try to prevent the evil spirits from invading you while you're sneezing. During the Black Plague, when so many people were dying in Europe, the disease would progress. And as people were very close to death, they would sneeze more. So again, it made sense that in that culture at that time, if somebody was sneezing, you did pray for them because they're not going to last much longer. And one of the popes during that period of time, the Pope of the Catholic Church, of course, actually passed a law that required that if you were near anybody who sneezed, that you had to bless them. So if you do that as a regular habit, you're actually obeying the Pope. Yes.
I've heard that if you kept your eyes open while you sneezed, your eyes would pop out of your head.
I have no evidence for that, but I think we would have seen it, death by sneezing. Not true. Not true. There's not much that makes your eyes pop out of your head as far as that goes. Again, it's so pervasive through our society. If you can't, there's almost nowhere you can go where people don't automatically, just as a reflex, say bless you. Let's talk about wedding superstitions. This, again, I could do a 5-hour lecture just on this, and aren't you lucky I'm not going to. Tying the knot. In some cultures, this is actually part of the traditional wedding ceremony, where the bride and groom actually do tie a knot, hold on to both ends of it. One other origin is that sailors would send a piece of rope to a woman that they wanted to marry. And if she tied a knot in it and sent it back, it meant she was saying yes. Isn't that sweet? And again, the symbolism that, again, 2 pieces of rope tied together have now made 1 piece of rope. So 2 individuals united in marriage So the symbolism, but it does go back to many, many traditional cultures.
So is this considered superstition or just plain tradition?
It's probably a tradition more than a superstition.
What about the, I don't know if tradition or superstition, just as she said
It's-
about the, something borrowed, something.
I'm going to talk about that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, bridesmaids, we have the tradition of bridesmaids all dressing alike. At least now that I watch I shouldn't admit that I watched that book.
Bridezilla, something like that.
No. Say yes to the dress or whatever, because now it's got traditional to not have the bridesmaids all match. But this goes back to Roman times. Again, the idea that evil spirits are hovering around. And a bride, it's not the groom, it's always the poor, weak woman, the bride is especially vulnerable on her wedding day. So in Roman law, they were required to have 10 witnesses, and they all had to dress alike. Even the bride and groom had to dress like everybody else. Why? To trick the evil spirits. They didn't know which one was the bride. Again, to confuse the evil spirits. The idea of a veil, again, comes from the idea of hiding her face so the devil doesn't know, who she is.
Why was the devil so interested in the bride? She's
Tasty and delectable.
virginal, supposedly.
Yeah,
That's her love of her
virgin, nice, juicy young woman, the prime of her life, He's a devil, who doesn't like chicks? It's very sexist in a way because it is always the woman that has to be protected in many of these traditions that we still hold on to. And it might make you think differently, if you have not yet married and gone through a traditional marriage ceremony to understand where some of these traditions come from. Because some of them are very, woman is the weak, has to be protected. In some cultures, the husband has to pick up the veil and look at the bride to make sure it's the woman he asked. But again, primarily to fool the evil spirits. In this country, the veil is associated with modesty and chastity, the blushing bride. In some Eastern ceremonies, the bride is veiled and the groom is not allowed to see the bride's face until after the ceremony. In some Jewish weddings, there's a ritual where the groom ensures that the bride is his intended, before he says, I do. Now, the wedding cake. The ancient Romans, in their wedding ceremonies, would break bread over the bride's head. This is just, I'm sorry, a poor woman. I got to pretend I'm not here. I got to dress all these people the same and have to cover my face. I have to break bread over my head because that meant good luck. In medieval England, they started building, it switched to cakes. It used to be pies. And they started making cakes. There was some, in France, they started making just piles of pastries. Like Dunkin' Donuts, just stacking up things and whatever. And then the tradition was to build them high. And then, if the bride and groom could still kiss each other reaching over the cake, that was a sign of good luck. So it's kind of a challenge of making the cakes high, and if the bride and groom could still reach each other over it. Again, the idea of breaking the bread over the bride's head. Notice how that's kind of evolved into, let's smush some cake into your face. Rings. Gold is considered, the highest of all substances, the most valuable, purity, everything. So a gold ring had all sorts of, and still does, has all sorts of symbolism with it. The idea of an unending circle, representing eternal love, unbroken promises and things like that. Then they started putting diamonds in it, and that's kind of an interesting thing. First of all, diamonds in themselves have a whole lot of cultural significance. In the early cultures, again, the Romans believed that diamonds actually had supernatural powers. And then people believed for many years that diamonds could act as an antidote to poisons. Diamonds could prevent insanity. It was considered the stone of reconciliation, so that if people had a fight, diamonds were supposed to either prevent that. There was an oracle, a fortune teller, soothsayer in Paris who believed that if the diamond was worn on the left hand, it would ward off evil spirits. There also used to be a belief that there was a blood vessel that went directly from this finger straight to your heart. There isn't, is it? No, that I know, okay. But that's why that finger is so important for wearing a wedding ring and engagement ring, because it was believed there was a direct connection to the heart. And the idea of wearing a ring. Now, people didn't really have engagement rings much before the last century. And diamonds were not usually associated with weddings or engagement rings. Now, this is not a superstition. This is just a fact. There's a huge diamond company. The biggest diamond company in the world is De Beers. I think from Belgium or whatever. In the 1920s and 1930s, a whole lot of diamonds were coming on the market because of the diamond mines in Africa. And so De Beers was trying to market diamonds. So they actually started the tradition that everybody bought into of the diamond engagement ring. There was no such thing prior to that. People might have given rings and whatever, but the fact that a diamond engagement ring is expected nowadays is actually resulted very, very good marketing. Good for them. Carrying the bride over the threshold. Guess why? Because a poor little thing might trip. And again, bringing her into her new home and protecting her from the evil spirits that might be waiting at the door. Tying shoes to the car. Back again in medieval England, at a wedding party, they'd actually throw shoes at the couple. Grooms used to hit their bride with a shoe. Isn't that lovely? I know you love me.
Future practice.
Whoa.
Goes the other way around.
What?
Goes the other way around, lady.
Yeah. I guess it's a mutual sign of how well we're getting along. Those diamonds didn't last very long, did they? So again, that has translated into our modern tradition of tying shoes to a car. It comes from shoes being associated with things. I don't think I have a slide for this, but something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. The tradition there was each of those symbolized something. So again, on our wedding day, you wanted to give happiness and, good luck and everything to the bride. So the something old represented continuity. That, you starting your family and this marriage is a continuation of your family and traditions before that. Something new meant hope for the future. Something borrowed represented happiness. I'm going to lend this to you because it has brought me great happiness, so I extend some of my happiness to you. You're welcome. And blue represented purity, love, and fidelity. So that's where that comes from. Just a belief that those four things represented gifts that we wanted to give
And
the
if
bride.
it's not being practiced, what happens?
The fidelity goes on.
Or accidentally who's married.
Okay. You might have missed an important point. This stuff isn't true.
Everybody seems to be doing it.
That's the whole point of this talk. A lot of people believe these things. It's been a part of the culture you grow up in. And you see the generations before you, you know, the black cat, the broken mirror. Nobody questions it. And again, I'm not trying to take away something that might be important to you, but I'm trying to show where this stuff comes from. And maybe if you realize, you know, I'm doing this because the Romans thought, you know, maybe you might not take it so seriously. Traditions can be fun. Traditions can be very fun. And again, as long as you don't let them rule your life, these superstitions. The time of the year. Okay, it used to be almost forbidden to marry in May. May has been considered an unlucky month to marry in for a number of reasons. In pagan times, the start of summer was when the festival of Beltane was celebrated with a lot of outdoor orgies. You don't want to get married when... Don't go there. This was therefore thought to be an unsuitable time to start married life. In Roman times, the Feast of the Dead and the Festival of the Goddess of Chastity both occurred in May. So again, that's an interesting conflict. The advice was taken more seriously in Victorian times than it is today. In most churches, the end of April was a busy time for weddings, because people were trying to get married in April because it was considered bad luck to get married in May. Queen Victoria actually forbid any of her children to get married during May. The Christian concept of Lent, the 40 days before Easter, is considered a very bad time to do anything that's happy. It's supposed to be a time of penance and, you know, abstinence and things. So getting married in Lent is a no-no in some religions. June was actually considered the best time to marry because it is named after Juno, the Roman god of love and marriage. So we always associate, you know, June brides. It's the most common time. There are practical reasons. School's usually out. Okay, so people can travel and things like that. You don't have to worry about snow plows and things in the middle of winter. Okay, but it does stem from some of these traditions and superstitions. The summer as a whole was considered a good time to marry, and this is partly to do with the sun's association with fertility. Again, the idea of a woman getting married was that she's going to have a lot of kids. That's what we want, fertility. Okay? So the fertility goddesses. In Irish culture, in Scotland, it's traditional for a bride on her wedding day to, as they say, walk with the sun to bring her good luck. She would walk from east to west on the south side of the church, then circle the church 3 times before she'd get married.
Oh my God. In high heels?
Okay, so why is that silly and the black cat isn't? Okay. Anyway. The moon. I'm going to kind of skip over this, but this has, or just do it very lightly. The moon is considered, again, an omen. It's considered to have great influence over human life, activities. Even the word lunacy, which is, you know, craziness, is related to moon poisoning. Okay, that if you're out in the moonlight, that you will become a lunatic. Okay, the phases of the moon and things feed into this and things. How many of you have heard that hospital emergency rooms, mental health clinics and whatever are always busier when there's a full moon out? Yeah? You know what? It's not true. There have actually been studies done, and there are many more. There's something in human behavior that's, and again, a lot of people study this and whatever. We're pattern seekers. We look for patterns in things. We see faces in the clouds. We look for, gee, this seems to happen every time I do this. It's like it gives us some sense of control over this very confusing and kind of scary world. And so we look for certain patterns. And the idea that during a full moon people act crazy or there's more crime and whatever, that's kind of easy to believe. But when they've actually done research, there is no difference. Yes?
I was watching a TV documentary about like the moon and how it affects people, and one of the people claimed that, oh, since people are mostly water, it affects you like a tide.
No. No.
I've heard that too.
That's true, but again, physicists, right? The gravitational attraction between two bodies is related to distance and their masses.
Yeah.
We are way too small for the moon to have any effect on us. And the distance, whatever. I mean, no, there's no way. There's no way.
Or werewolves, I guess.
What, and werewolves and things, yes. Again, it comes out of, God, that's a big scary world out there. Let's see if we can find some patterns. There's also something called confirmation bias. If you believe that there are more people admitted to the emergency room during a full moon, and you work in a hospital, you're going to kind of notice, wow, we sure were busy tonight. And that feeds into something you have already kind of heard is true. When the moon isn't full, you may be just as busy, but you don't relate to it. So confirmation bias is when you notice the things that match your belief system, but ignore the things that don't. And we're all guilty of that. You know, we think that, gee, every time, I've got one, and I want to do the evidence sometime. Even growing up, I grew up in Michigan, it always seemed to me it rained on July 5th. Okay. Now, my explanation of that is on July 4th, all those fireworks put all this smoke and stuff up in the air, and that must attract the water molecules so it all falls out on July 5th. Now, whenever it rains on July 5th, I go, aha, see, it's raining on July 5th. The years that it doesn't rain on July 5th, I don't notice. That's called confirmation bias. And that's, I don't know. But it'd be easy to find out, right? Things can be tested, and that's what science is all about. I think there's a correlation between fireworks and whether it rains the next day. You could do a study of that. You know, if that were true, it would rain every day at Disney. Right? Notice how fireworks. Oh, well, wow. There goes that. Anyway. Maybe it's only true in Michigan. Okay, unlucky numbers. Again, this is part of what today is all about in terms of unlucky numbers. And different cultures have different unlucky numbers. Now, 13 is considered unlucky. That's a pretty bad picture, I'm sorry, but 13 is considered unlucky in our culture. And there's many explanations for that. Some people say it comes from the Last Supper, and there were 13 people at dinner, and that's always bad. So there are people in different cultures who will never allow 13 people to sit at one table. They will tell someone to leave, or they'll invite, the paper boy to get dinner with them rather than have 13 people. Because there's a belief that if there's ever 13 people at dinner, that the first person who leaves, which in the story of the Last Supper was Judas, is going to die. So the 13 also comes from some other possibly historical things, but most people believe that the origin is, again, the 13 people at the Last Supper.
What about not having a 13th floor skyscraper?
Yeah.
Think about that, yeah. How many hotels and businesses don't have a, well, of course they have a 13th floor. They just call it 14. Yes.
The elevator.
It was a couple of years ago, my mom and I, we went to a hotel, and it was a really big one, so there's actually more than 10 floors this time. And our floor was on the 14th one, so I'm like, technically we're on the 13th floor, but there's no button for it in the elevator.
Right. Because this is such a pervasive superstition in our society that people wouldn't want to stay on a floor where the room number was 1302. Again, how can a number have control over your life? Only if you let it. Only if you think it will. But again, there are people who will not go out of their house on, especially a Friday the 13th. Fridays are considered unlucky too. Again, from the Christian culture, that comes from supposedly Jesus was crucified on a Friday. So it's just overall a bad luck day. So a Friday the 13th is a double whammy because you've got Fridays that are unlucky and Friday the 13th. So, you know, and you'll hear people talk about it. You know, you'll hear news reporters and say, oh, it's a Friday the 13th, you know, be careful out there. If you understand, if you have ever heard about the history of the calendars too, the idea of calling today a Thursday, calling today the month of September, and calling it the 12th is totally artificial. It's totally what's called a human construct. And when was it that they changed the whole calendar, the Gregorian calendar or whatever? So what would be a Thursday today wouldn't have been a Thursday a couple hundred years, you know. And what about crossing the international date line?
What is that?
The line you cross when you fly around the world and you lose a day. So, you know, like right now, it might be Friday the 13th somewhere. So does the bad luck kind of move across the surface of the earth like the shadow of, you know. Again, think about it and have fun with it. But again, different cultures have different unlucky numbers. In many of the Asian cultures, 4 is a horribly unlucky number. Because the symbol for 4, it's either Chinese or Japanese, is the same as the symbol for death.
It's Japanese.
Japanese. So, again, I saw a show on TV where they were trying to, you know, House Hunters or the Property Brothers or something. I have way too much free time. And he was helping this young couple find a house, and she said there cannot be a 4 in the address. They would not live in a house that had a 4 anywhere in the address.
What about multiples of 4?
Even worse.
Even worse. You know, what about 16? That's 4 squared. I mean, you could anyway, you can see where this goes. So, I came across some really odd ones. For instance, in Russia, it's supposedly good luck if a bird poops on you.
Yes.
It makes you feel better.
Or if your right hand scratches, you get money. If your left hand scratches,
Yes,
ain't out
itches.
money.
Yeah, itches. Yeah, that's confirmation bias. Okay. Again, and let's talk about why. Why do these superstitions survive? Why do these even spring up in the first place? Again, life is so uncertain. And it's very scary. If I get up in the morning, I don't know what's going to go on, but if I believe that certain rituals I go through, if I put, oh, you should never put your left shoe on first. And you'd never put a sock on and then a shoe and keep the other foot bare. I mean, so these things spring up, and now I know I'm going to have a good day because I put my shoes on in the right order. And when I spilled some salt, I threw it over my left shoulder. And, you know, people, it gives you kind of a sense of control, even if it doesn't make any sense. It gives comfort. Some of these are comforting. Family traditions are probably the biggest. And as I said before, we are pattern seekers. We notice that certain things happen. If something good happens because we were wearing a lavender blouse on the plane, then I'm always going to wear a lavender blouse on the plane. Even though my mind tells me that can't have anything to do with whether the pilot's a good pilot or not. But I feel better. Remember, that wasn't my superstition. Mine's just that July 5th raining thing. I still
Which you just disproved, so...
What?
You just disproved it in conversation with us.
I know.
So you gotta throw that out there.
Well, no, I can modify it. Yeah, it's true in Michigan, it's not true in Florida. Okay. Here you go. Occasionally it seems to work. And there's the confirmation bias. Once in a while it does happen. You know, I fell and twisted my ankle, and it was a Friday the 13th.
That's it.
That's it. Well, that'll teach me to ever go out of the house on Friday the 13th. Again, this is lack of understanding about how the world works. That's pretty important. If you think that what pair of socks you have on controls something that's going to happen 6 hours from now, I would say you don't have a good grasp on how the world works. Okay? Again, there can be some things. For instance, if you think these are your lucky socks, you're going to probably have a better attitude when you're up at bat. And you may do better than if you think, I forgot to put on my lucky socks, I'm going to screw up. And sure enough, you screw up. So there's the self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. Lack of understanding about what constitutes evidence. You know what an anecdote is? Somebody saying, this happened to me, I did this and that happened to me. Anecdote is not evidence. An anecdote is just a person describing something. And despite our common sense, even if 50 people tell us that something happened, that still doesn't prove that A caused B. You need, for evidence, you need objective, not people describing how they felt or what happened to them personally. You have no way of testing that. But if you can set up experiments to say, maybe it does rain more on July 5th than other days of the year.
You could look that up.
You could look that up. You could look up data. You wouldn't go around and ask people, say, did you ever notice it rains more in July? Oh, yeah. Yes, you know, I could get 60 people to agree with me, and that doesn't make it true. Okay, you've got to step away, take away the human emotion part of it, take away the possibly fallible way that people remember things, and look at objective numbers and see if there's a pattern. And hopefully without having made your mind up about what the answer is going to be. It's like, I really want the answer to be, so I'm not going to include these years where it didn't happen. I'm just going to select what they call data mining. And why do people believe these things? Sometimes we just never thought about it. So I'm going to look at some of these. Always align your shoes next to each other neatly. Never leave one flipped over. Again, I haven't known, but I did mention that about shoes being upside down, so that you have a smooth day. If your nose itches, someone's talking about you. By what mechanism in the universe? There's somebody talking about you, cause your nose to itch.
Or even your ears burning.
Or your ears burning, yeah. If your palm itches, money is coming to you, but it's only your right palm. Or, yeah. Putting new shoes on a table causes bad luck. Whistling inside of a building causes a death. You just killed somebody. What are you doing? I never heard that one. Deaths come in threes. That's good. I had heard that. We always think that bad things happen in threes. There's your confirmation bias example. We notice it when it happens. But we don't notice all the times that bad things happen, and there isn't a second and a third.
You just actually wait for the second.
We wait for,
it could be like 6 months.
Exactly. I mean, these are pretty, like I say, they're non-quantifiable,
Yes,
you know. Threes, you know, 3 a year or whatever. But they talk about that like sometimes in plane crashes, like if there's been 2, oh, you know there's going to be a third one. You'll notice it if there are. You notice patterns that may or may not really exist. We've got the umbrella one here, throwing salt over your shoulder.
Now thinking about the number 6.
No, what about number 6?
I thought maybe
666.
yeah, I thought maybe.
Well, 3-6 is 666 is a biblical reference.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be the sign of the beast, and some people are very, you know, again, attaching power to inanimate things, or even conceptual things like numbers. To me, it was very silly, but some people, 666, when it was June 6th, 2006, man, the whole world freaked out.
What about the whole step on a crack, break your mother's back?
That, I don't know where that comes from. Step on a crack, break your mother's back.
I stepped on my mom's back injury.
Yeah. Again, is that on
I think one of the funniest things about the number 666 is that the remake of the movie The Omen was released on July 6th, or no, June 6th, 2006.
And didn't they play right into it?
That's good marketing.
You know, good marketing, again. Don't put your handbag on the floor or else you will be broke.
Or,
Well, first of all, your handbag can get dirty and you don't want to, you know, but
You might be broke from medical bills.
maybe a real short person's going to come and steal it. I don't know. Good luck charms. Didn't even mention that. Yeah. And I meant to say, you know, I brought my lucky crystals here with me today so that I would do a good job. You know, the idea of having an object. I have an amulet here that I got in Egypt. I forget what they're called. Anybody know what these things are called that have your
Glyphs, the cartouches?
cartouche? Exactly. And supposedly these are good luck. It supposedly has the Egyptian hieroglyphics for my name or something. So good luck charms. Yeah, that we again attach power to inanimate objects. Again, because maybe, you know, just like the socks and whatever. I brought this apple so I could eat it. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Totally forgot. We could sit here all day and do this. Okay, let's not. Again, I talked about ladders, umbrellas, throwing salt. Elephants racing away from the front door. All right, move. What on earth does that mean? Elephants?
I heard that elephants bring you good luck.
The what?
Elephants bring you good luck.
Elephants bring you good luck.
Only when their chumps are out.
Okay. Broom sweeping across your foot. I never heard that one. Is that good luck or bad luck?
That you will never get married.
You're not going to get married. Yeah, I was going to say, just sleep away. If I'd only known it was that easy. Don't split poles with loved ones.
Yeah, when you're holding someone's hand, you come up and there's like a pole, a flagpole, light pole, anything.
You say
You're
bread
supposed
matter.
to go on one side. If you split the pole, then it's like,
that would be together?
yeah. You're gonna like break your connection.
The turning back for something, turning back for something, that's bad luck. I
Yeah, like you're going somewhere and you forgot something?
Well, you know, I did that this morning. I was halfway to work and I forgot to bring a mirror, so I went back to house. So you might not want to be anywhere near me when I leave the building here because I'm going to have some bad luck today. Well, you too who broke the mirror. Notice I let someone else do that. Wearing what? Babies looking between their legs.
Yes, that one. And always have something red on the baby.
Have something red.
Red, yeah. Like
I would.
red ribbon, red something to wear when he was
It's endless, isn't it? And it's interesting because, again, many of these appear to be cultural.
It's Catholic, so I don't know if it's Catholic, but Frank and he goes, my husband is,
What is that?
saints, and he,
Yes.
and so he carries around Judas, and he has where he has like a
Oh, yeah, the
cigar
Catholics have
that's stuck next to
scapulars
a
and
glass of
medals.
water.
Yeah. Yeah, again, this is just a variation of Lucky Charms. Okay, you had a question.
What about like the evil eye and things like that?
I know it's like there's this really weird superstition in Romania, in my country, where like if you look at a little kid or like a baby, especially when they're sleeping, you're like really staring at them, like how beautiful they are. You always want to sit on them to like
That,
oh
yeah,
my god.
the idea of evil eyes and, you know.
I have one.
Yeah.
Well, never let a baby look under the bed.
Never what?
Never let a baby, like a young child, look underneath the bed.
Never let a child look under the bed.
there's a lot of them.
This could go on.
Thank you for that.
One more back here.
Actually, I have a good luck one that you have.
Okay, let me hear, I can't hear.
If you're in a cave, and you know how sometimes, moisture pools in the caves and they have like groundwater
Yeah.
and stuff? If water were to drip from a stalactite to your head, that was supposedly 24 hours of good luck.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
So are you supposed to stand in the cave for 24 hours while the sun drips on your head?
I would consult with the stalactites.
Yeah, or the stalactite gods. I mean, there must be some evil.
Let me give you to the limestone department real quick.
Okay. I'm still. Okay, I've really enjoyed this. I appreciate your attention. And how